Hey to all the spooks out there. I'm Ange.
And I'm Amanda.
And this is Spine Chilling Chats.
Hello.
If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're so glad that you're here.
Yes, we are.
If this isn't your first time joining us, welcome back. We're so glad that you love us still.
Yes, thank you so much.
Amanda has a story for us today.
I do. And there's a trigger warning before we start. There is torture and murder, including a child. Yeah, those are the fun ones, right? So, keeping with our November birthdays, I chose Rosemary Pauline West. She was born November 29th, 1953, and she was from Northam, Devon, England. It was her and her husband who did these evil things like torture and murder of 9 women between 1973 and 1987. Her husband's name was Fred. So we'll start with her early life. She was born to William Andrew Bill Letts and Daisy Gwendolyn Fuller. Her mother had a difficult pregnancy. Rosemary, which I'm going to refer to her as Rose from now on, was the 5th of 7 children. They were poor, and her mom suffered from depression. And back then, they still believed in electroconvulsive therapy. So she did that during and after her pregnancy.
Oh.
So that could be why she is how she is.
I
would
imagine
assume that's not safe.
Yeah, I'd imagine it has some sort of lasting effect there.
Yeah. Some argue and say that is what caused the prenatal development injuries to Rose, and that's why she did what she did. She was a very moody teenager, often daydreaming, and she did not do very well at school. So, they never really don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's a theme of people who are turning out to be murderers and serial killers that don't do well in school.
I don't know. I think some of them, though, some of them have a really high IQ.
Oh, yeah, they're really super smart, but I guess the ones I've covered, have usually not done very well in school. So her parents separated, and she lived with her mom, and it didn't say when they separated. It just said they separated. She lived with her mom and attended Cleve School, and that lasted about 6 months, and then moved in with her father. And her father suffered from
schizophrenia.
Ding, ding, ding. He was extremely violent and repeatedly sexually abused Rose and her older sister, Patricia. Real winner there. Real winner. When she hit puberty, she was obsessed with her developing body, and she would often parade around naked or semi-naked in the house in front of her little brother, Graham, who was born in 1957.
That's not right.
No. Yeah. How about I understand being proud of your body. Like, I understand
you're going through
being like, oh yeah, I look good and I'm hitting puberty and all this.
Things are changing and
parade around in front of your little brothers.
Yeah, that's weird. We don't do that.
Nope. On several occasions, when she was 13, she would go into her 9-year-old brother Graham's room at night and molest him and her younger brother Gordon, which is the youngest. I think is what it was saying. It was the youngest brother, Gordon. She first met her husband at the bus stop in Cheltenham in early 1969. She was 14, but shortly after she met him, she turned 15, and he was 27. When she first met him, she was repulsed by his unkempt appearance, but since then, showing her some attention and fawning all over her, she started to like him. She refused to go out with him on 2 separate occasions, but she did let him follow her or accompany her home, like
escort her.
Escort her. Like, I don't like you, but you could walk me home, or you could take me home, or whatever. He found out where she worked, and she worked at a bread shop, and had some lady outside of the bread shop go inside and say, a man outside, and handed her a gift.
That's weird.
That is very weird.
And I wonder what the gift was.
I know. I was curious too,
like, you would think it'd be like flowers, but then they would just say flowers. They wouldn't say a gift.
Right. So I'm wondering.
And if it was jewelry, you would think they would say jewelry.
I wonder if it was like a stuffed animal. I don't know what they gave back in those days. Weed? 1969. It was the summer of love. I don't know. Drugs, sex, and alcohol. So he came in a few minutes later and asked her out on a date, and she accepted. So if you guys want to get somebody on a date that tells you no, just get them a gift and have somebody else deliver it, and then walk in a few minutes later like a creep and ask them out, and she'll for sure.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just walk in and hand them the gift yourself?
No idea. They began a relationship and often went to the caravan park where he lived with two of his children from his previous marriage to Catherine Rena Costello. So I'm assuming, I still didn't look it up. I should have. I'm assuming a caravan park is like maybe like a trailer park or an RV park.
I'm voting more towards like an RV campground type deal where you just kind of live in your van.
Yeah.
Caravan.
Caravan park.
I have no clue what a caravan is.
It's like a van.
Yeah.
It's just a regular, I think it's like a, not like one of the full size vans, but like a bigger than a minivan, but
like
smaller
a Volkswagen van type deal. Yeah. Because people used to live in those, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 That's a thing.
It is a thing. He also lived in the caravan park with his daughter, Anne-Marie, and his stepdaughter, Charmaine. Charmaine was Catherine's daughter. And so when Catherine and Fred split up, Charmaine stayed with Fred, her stepdad.
Which is weird.
Which is very weird. Like, I can see if maybe they were together when she was an infant and they grew up and like she stayed
close
with him.
To him, but still,
it doesn't specify how old any of them were when all of this happened. But I know if I was a teenager or I was 9 or 10 years old and my mom and stepdad separated, I wouldn't stay with my stepdad.
No, you would go with your mom. That's your blood. Unless she wasn't any better of a parent. I don't know.
And it doesn't say why she doesn't have them. It doesn't say any of that stuff. Rose became the caretaker type person to the girls. She said that they were neglected and she initially treated them with love and affection. And in the beginning of the relationship, she often told Fred to take the girls out on adventures together to pick wildflowers. Within a couple of weeks of meeting Fred, she left her job and became a full-time nanny to his children. This was an agreement between her and Fred, and that he would provide money to give her parents on Fridays to convince them that she was still working at the bread shop. So she's lying. She's a liar.
If you gotta lie to your parents, you shouldn't be doing it.
A couple months later, she introduced Fred to her family. They were not impressed by her choice of a partner. Fred was boastful and arrogant and a pathological liar. Her father disapproved of the relationship, threatening Fred and promising to call Gloucestershire.
That sounds like you're trying to say Worcestershire.
Fred promising to call social services if he continued to date his daughter. So Rose's parents forbade their daughter to continue to date him, but of course she did what she wanted to do. So her parents went to the Gloucestershire social services and they said that their 15-year-old was having sex with an older man. They didn't say how old he was. They just said older man. And that she started to have engaged in prostitution at Fred's caravan park. So she was placed in a home for troubled teenagers in Cheltenham in August of 1969. So at the time, they accuse her of being a prostitute, but they don't know for sure
that she was.
And it doesn't say that she was. She was only allowed to leave under controlled conditions. She was allowed to go home on the weekends and visit her parents, which she did, but she also visited Fred when she turned 16. She moved back in with her parents, and Fred was serving a 30-day sentence for theft and unpaid fines.
He sounds like a winner.
Real winner. When he got out of jail, Rose left her parents' house and moved into the Cheltenham flat where Fred had left and got Charmaine and Anne-Marie from social services, and then came back and they all lived together.
One big happy family.
Rose's father also tried to prevent Rose from seeing Fred, and she was examined by a police surgeon, whatever the fuck that is, no clue, in February of 1970, who confirmed she was pregnant. She was then again placed into care but discharged on March 6th with the exception of terminating her pregnancy and going back to her family. But guess what she did?
I'm gonna keep my baby.
She decided to live with Fred, and it doesn't say if she terminated the pregnancy or not as of yet. And her father forbade her to ever stepping foot again inside their house.
Big loss there.
3 months later, the couple left the flat and moved into a ground floor flat of a 2-story house in Midland Road in Gloucester and on October 17th, 1970. She gave birth to their first child.
Yep, she kept the baby.
So she kept it. It was a daughter named Heather Ann, which now there's speculation that Heather may have been sired or birthed, conceived by Rose's own father. Dun, dun, dun. 2 months later, Fred was thrown back in prison for theft of a car, tires, and vehicle tax. He was there until June 24th, 1971. He served 6.5 months, and Rose just turned 17, looking after all 3 of the girls, Charmaine, Anne Marie, and Heather Ann. Charmaine and Anne Marie began to look at Rose and refer to her as their mother, according to Anne Marie. She and Charmaine were physically and emotionally abused throughout the time they lived with Rose at the Midland Road flat. Anne Marie was submissive and prone to display emotion to the abuse. Charmaine infuriated Rose by her stoic refusal to cry or display any sign of servitude, no matter how severely she was treated.
And good for her, because if somebody's beating me, you sure as shit better believe that I'm going to look you in the eye the whole time. I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. So good for her.
Yep, that's what I say. Despite the years of neglect and abuse, Charmaine's spirit had not been broken. She would walk wistfully to Anne Marie and believe that she had held on to the thought of, and she would tell Anne Marie, quote, "Mummy will come and save me." And that's what kept her going. Anne Marie later recollected that her sister was antagonizing Rose by making statements such as, "My real mommy wouldn't swear or shout at us."
And I'm sure Rose would be like, well, your mommy ain't here. I'm here.
In one instance, they had a friend of Charmaine's named Tracy Giles, who lived in the upper part of the flat at Midland Road. She recalls that one time she entered into the West's flat unannounced to see Charmaine naked, standing on a chair, gagged, with her hands bound behind her back with a belt. And Rose stood there with a large wooden spoon in her hand, according to Tracy's account. Charmaine had been calm and unconcerned, while Anne Marie had been standing by the door with a blank expression on her face. The hospital records would say that Charmaine had received treatment for a severe puncture wound to her left ankle in the casualty unit, which I'm assuming is like the ER.
What was the spoon for?
Spanking her? Hitting her? Beating her?
But that's not going to give her a puncture wound.
No, that's what But she said at the Gloucester Royal Hospital on March 28, 1971, was explained that it was a household accident. So how do you have a household accident with a wooden spoon and a puncture into your left ankle? I don't know.
We're some clumsy girls, but...
Yeah, like I can understand a household accident because I fell down my sister's stairs and broke my ankle. That would be considered a household accident. However, I didn't puncture anything. So I don't know.
I don't know.
It is to believe that Rose murdered Charmaine before Fred was released from prison on June 24th, 1971. It was also known that she had taken Charmaine and Anne Marie and Heather Ann to visit Fred on June 15th. Charmaine was killed on or very shortly after this date. The ontology confirmed that Charmaine had died while Fred was still incarcerated. So, how do you explain that? Saying you didn't do it? I don't know. Tracy Giles' mother, Shirley, corroborated the fact that Charmaine had died before Fred's release at Rose's trial. Shirley stated that her 2 daughters had been playmates of Charmaine and Anne Marie while her family lived in the upper part of the flat of 25 Midland Road in 1971. She said that her family had vacated the upper flat in April of 71, and she brought Tracy to visit Charmaine one day in June, only for Tracy to be told by Rose, she said, she's gone to live with her mother and bloody good riddance. She explained Charmaine's disappearance to the others who inquired about her whereabouts by saying that Fred's first wife, Catherine Rena West, had taken the eldest daughter to live with her in Bristol. She went as far as to even inform the staff at Charmaine's primary school that she had moved in with her mother to London.
You know, I don't know if it's just because it was a different time, but I know nowadays, like, you have to have your school records transferred, and you have to, like, there's paperwork involved. You have
to have, you can't just send the paperwork over. The parent has to come and sign off for them to send it over, and then the school has to call the other school and request those records. So the parents are still involved, but the school is involved in getting those records and sending them. So how do they not put two and two together when one school called and said, hey, I need Charmaine's records, and the other school is just like, okay, I'll send them over, but then Charmaine never enrolls. Like, I don't know.
Oh, maybe it's different too because it's over in England. Yeah.
Fred was released on June 24th, and he allied with Anne Marie's concerns for her sister's whereabouts by claiming her mother, Rena, had collected Charmaine and returned to her native Scotland. In Anne Marie's autobiography, so now, not only was it Bristol, which I don't know where that's at, it may be in London. She was said to have moved to Bristol, then London, and now they're saying Scotland. So get the story straight, guys.
Making up places here.
In Anne Marie's autobiography called Out of the Shadows, she was fully white while Charmaine was part Asian. And when asked why her mother took Charmaine but not her, Fred said, she wouldn't want you, love. You're the wrong color. So that's the reason why her mom didn't take her, is because she was the wrong color.
I know. It's terrible. I feel bad because it's making Anne Marie doubt, like, make her feel like she's not wanted as much as her sister. And that's wrong, that they're manipulating her that way.
Anne Marie's the one that would show emotion. Anne Marie's the one that gets left behind. Anne Marie's the one that gets beaten by Rose. Like, yeah, she's got it bad.
But in reality, like, she was the lucky one because she's not dead.
She's not dead. Nope. Charmaine's body was stored in the cold cellar of Midland Road until Fred was released from prison, and then he buried her naked body in the yard close to the back door. Go ahead.
How could any parent be okay? I understand that he's her stepfather, but if you're gonna raise a child as your own child, like, you have custody over her mother, her biological mother, why would you stay with a person, help cover up that person killed your child?
Right. Like, if you're going to keep the child, you need to treat it as your own.
Yeah.
And you killed my child, so fuck you. I'm turning you into the police.
I don't understand.
Especially if I just got out of fucking prison.
Yeah, and now you're
putting me in jeopardy
of going back for something even worse than what I was in there for before.
Yep. He remained adamant that he had not dismembered her. A subsequent post-mortem suggests the body had been severed at the hips. This may have been caused by building work that Fred conducted on the property in 1976. Several bones, particularly the patella, finger, wrist, toe, and ankle bones, were missing from her skeleton. leading that the missing parts may have been kept as keepsakes. This would prove to be distinctive findings at all of the autopsies of the victims that were exhumed in 1994. So not only did they kill her, but they kept some of her bones as a keepsake. Why don't you just keep the whole fucking live child?
Yeah, you could have it forever. Like, I guess is why we're not killers.
Right.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around it.
Yep. Rena maintained sporadic contact. Rena, which is Charmaine and Anne-Marie's mom, she had sporadic contact with her children after she and Fred separated. She was wanting to know where her children were in August of 1971. Fred's sister-in-law, Christine, later said that Rena was depressed and extremely anxious about her children. After getting Fred's Midland address, she went to go talk to him to discuss the custody of her daughters. This was the last time Rena was seen alive.
But she was okay that whole time, not knowing where they were, what they were up to.
Because she kept...
But all of a sudden she's concerned?
Right, and she didn't really keep in contact with them very often.
No, it said sporadically.
She had been murdered by strangulation, possibly in the backseat of Fred's Ford. Her body was discovered with a short length of metal tubing that was found with her remains, leaving open the possibility that she had been restrained and a subject to sexual assault before her murder. The body was dismembered, placed in a plastic bags, and buried close to a cluster of trees known as the yew tree coppice at Letterbox Field. Like, why? Because she wanted her children?
Why not just let them have...
You don't want them, obviously. You're beating them and you killed one. Just let her have them. On January 29th, 1972, Fred and Rose finally got married. They went to the Gloucestershire registration office where Fred said that he was a bachelor on the marriage certificate, and that was false. No family, no friends were invited. A couple of months later, Rose was pregnant with her second child. They moved from Midland Road address to 25 Cromwell Street. It was a 3-story home located close to Gloucester and rented from the council, whatever the council is. Fred later purchased the property from the council for £7,000, which is equivalent to £117 in 2023.
Which that's a decent amount of money. Like, where is he getting his money? What is he doing?
Doesn't say. It does say he's got a job, though, but it doesn't say what he does.
Yeah, I wonder what.
To make up for the purchase, the upper floor rooms were converted to like a bed and breakfast type of thing, like an Airbnb or whatever. But they called it a bed sit. So I'm assuming it was like
You rent a room.
Yeah, so what would that be called? That would be called a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
You rent a room. It's a form of accommodations common in some parts of the United Kingdom, which consists of a single room per occupant, with all occupants typically sharing a bathroom.
Yeah.
That are included in a legal category of dwellings referred to as houses. That was to supplement his income. He later installed a cooker and a wash basin for the first floor, so that way the people who lived upstairs or stayed upstairs, didn't need to enter the ground floor, so they can keep some privacy. They lived on the first floor, so only Fred and the family were allowed to be in the back garden of the property. On June 1st, Rose gave birth to a second daughter. The day of the birth led Fred and Rose to name the child May June, which don't make no sense because she was born in June, so why not just name her June?
June, yeah.
A little bit after giving birth to the second child, she began to work as a prostitute. She used one of the rooms upstairs, and she advertised in magazines. Fred encouraged her to see clients in Gloucester and West.
She advertised in magazines?
Uh-huh.
Who?
Yeah.
Who just puts an ad in it? Like, what?
She would advertise in magazines.
Could you imagine getting a magazine, you're flipping through, and all of a sudden you see
well, they used to do it in the papers, not for
worker.
sex, but like, didn't they used to do like man searching female?
Yeah, and
for blah blah blah.
Yeah,
the singles ads.
Yeah, that's so weird.
You got to think it's back in the 70s.
Yeah,
so that was still a thing. It's not like modern day dating. You don't swipe right.
I'm not aware of any modern dating
sites anyway.
Yeah, as I've
been on them. They're shit. I don't recommend. 10 out of 10 do not recommend dating sites. They're shit.
Yeah, I've been with Robbie since I was in high school, so I've never.
But good for those of you who have met people off the internet. Like, that's amazing. Just not for me.
No. And it's scary nowadays, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know who you're getting. Mm-mm. Too many creepers out there.
Fred encouraged her to see clients in Gloucester, West Indian community on top of the prostitution. She engaged in casual sex with both male and female lodgers within the house. And individuals spread encounters from his and individuals Fred encountered from his work. And that's all it says about him working.
So he's hooking up his buddies?
He's hooking up the buddies.
Hey.
If you ain't got none for the homies.
You wanna come hit my old lady?
It ain't, what is that, Snoop Dogg? I think it's Snoop Dogg. It ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. Just saying. She bragged to several people that no man or woman can completely satisfy her. When she was engaged in sexual activity with women, she would increase the level of brutality to which her subject or partner with the acts of partially suffocating or inserting increasingly large dildos into her partner's body. If they resisted or expressed pain or fear, she would get excited and ask, "Aren't you woman enough to take it?"
You know, I just keep thinking of I'm sure everybody's been to a sex shop before. Okay, and you know the big, huge dildo.
No, I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's like a whole fist.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I'm imagining that's what she's working up to.
Ugh. Really?
Yes, a whole fucking fist.
Nope, never seen it.
Just shove it right up in there.
Mm-hmm. Takes a new meaning of fisting. It became apparent that Rose and Fred, who regularly participated in threesomes with each other, and Rose's lovers, liked to take women beyond their sexual limits, including bondage. They really particularly liked any form of sex that had dominance, pain, and violence. They had a large collection of bondage and restraining devices to help curb these fetishes.
You know, there's other people that have the same kinks as you do. Why don't you find the people that want it?
Because they like them to be tortured. They want them to not like it.
It's not so much as just the bondage. It's the fear
that they're putting into these people.
Okay.
Yeah, because it made her even more excited when the people were in pain and were fighting it. Not like fighting it, but like trying to resist.
Not enjoying it.
Yeah. They also had magazines and pictures, and then later expanding his collection to include videos depicting bestiality and graphic sexual abuse of children. Rose was the one that controlled the finances and gave Fred his pay packets. The room that she used for prostitution was known throughout the household as, I don't want to say it.
Say it.
Mandy's room. Mandy being the work name Rose used when she was with her clients.
Although you're not a Mandy.
No, but my mom calls me Mandy, and this other guy at my old job used to call me Mandy.
It's weird. I don't think of you as a Mandy.
Just Amanda or Amanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I type your name, I put Amanda, but I think when I'm referring to you, like I don't intentionally drop the A.
It just happens.
I'm just lazy. It's just Amanda.
It's just Amanda. When people call me, they're just like Amanda.
Yeah. Nobody enunciates the A.
No. She had several hidden peepholes along the walls for Fred to watch her entertain her clients.
That's sick.
Fred also installed baby monitors in the room, allowing him to listen from elsewhere in the house.
They sure do have a particular set of kinks there.
Yeah, well, and her room was decked out because she had a private bar, a red light outside the door that warned when
Red light district. Woo
Mhm.
woo.
was to not be disturbed because she was entertaining clients.
She was working.
She was the only one with a key, and it was hung around her neck. Fred even installed a separate doorbell to the household, which her clients were instructed to ring whenever they visited. Much of the money made from Rose's prostitution was spent on home improvement, so at least they didn't live in squalor.
Yeah.
And
I personally, I don't think that prostitution is bad.
No,
sex working is working. Okay.
You're making money.
If you're making money, you're feeding your family. Like, that's what matters. And if it's something you enjoy, if you enjoy sex work, more power to you. I don't care, as long as you're
providing,
you're happy with what you're doing and it's not a forced situation. And if you're not hurting others by doing it, like, be safe, get checked regularly for STDs and whatnot, so you don't go spreading stuff. Do you.
Be safe.
Yep. You do you, boo.
Be smart, because some of those Johns out there, or Janes, if you're a guy doing prostitution, they can be ugly. Not ugly as in physically ugly, but ugly as in like,
yeah,
murder or
hurt
beat you or hurt you. Yeah. In 1977, Rosa's father, Bill, came to tolerate his daughter's marriage and develop a grudging respect for Fred. They opened a cafe together named the Green Lantern. Bill was also known to visit Cromwell Street to solicit his daughter's services.
That's real good, Dad.
How fucking disgusting. By 1983, Rose had given birth to 8 children, with 3 who had been conceived by clients. Fred accepted these children as his own and falsely informed them the reason their skin was darker than that of their siblings was because his great-grandmother was a black woman.
I mean, good on him for making them feel like they're not the odd man out, but they're shady parents anyways.
Right.
So I don't know why he's worried about their feelings when they do worse things.
Right. When the children reached the age of 7, they were assigned daily chores to perform around the house. They were not allowed to socialize outside the household unless Fred or Rose were present. They had strict rules with severe punishments, always physical. The children were scared of Fred and Rose, but Rose inflicted the vast majority of the abuse. It was sometimes irrational and indiscreet, or just inflicted for Rose's gratification. So that's another thing. Like, I think that they didn't go for the bondage people is because they liked it when
they hurt others.
Yes. She also was super nice and tried not to mark on the children's faces and hands.
Oh, what a good mother.
How sweet.
She just didn't want CPS involved or whatever it is over there.
I think it's still CPS, or social services is what they've been calling it.
Social services. Okay.
Heather Ann and her younger brother, Stephen, born in 1973, ran away from home. They returned after several weeks, alternately sleeping rough or staying with friends. And that's all it really said about them. They were each beaten upon their return. Between 72 and 92, the West children were admitted to the casualty units of the local hospitals 31 times.
And nobody thought to flag them.
Right.
As, hey, maybe this family is having some abusive issues. Look at how many times these kids have been to the hospital.
Right. Like, injured. To the emergency room on top of that. All the injuries were explained as accidents and never reported to social services. At one point, Stephen was mopping the kitchen floor with a cloth, and Rose accidentally stepped into the bowl of water. And in response, Rose hit the boy over the head with the bowl and then repeatedly kicked him in the head and chest as she shouted, "You did that on purpose, you little swine." Another time she became furious about a missing kitchen utensil. She then grabbed the knife she had been using to cut a slab of meat. She repeatedly inflicted abrasions onto May June's chest until her ribcage was covered with light knife marks. All the while, May June screamed, "No, Mom, no, Mom," and Stephen and Heather stood by hopelessly, sobbing. On another occasion, in August of 1974, she chased Fred with a carving knife. He was able to slam the door and shut himself into the room. She had ran and lunged at him with the knife, resulting in the knife being embedded into the door. 3 of Rose's fingers were slipped down the blade and almost severed from her hand.
Mm-mm.
She calmly wrapped her hand in the towel and said, "Look what you done, fella. You got to take me to the hospital now."
Right there just proves that she's fucked up in the head.
If you calmly sit there and say that,
as your fingers are almost severed
off.
Oh. Mm-mm. So I know how bad just a paper cut is.
Yeah.
You know, one time when Robbie and I were camping, I was prepping food. We were in a rustic cabin, and like there was nothing nearby. And I was prepping food, and I cut the tip of my finger. And I probably should have gotten stitches, but like we were up in the UP, and so we didn't want to go to some hospital somewhere we didn't,
Yeah, you're not familiar with.
And so there was a first aid kit in the cabin, so I just wrapped it up the best I could for the remaining couple days. And like it took probably close to a year for me to get feeling back in the tip of my finger.
You probably should have got stitches.
Yeah, like it was numb. And I still have a scar. I don't know if you can. I can't see it right now. I don't even remember which. I think it was this one. You can kind of see it. My hand is so dry.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, so I can imagine it's slicing your fingers. That like she's not going to have good function of her hand,
right?
Like because that was just a little fingertip, and it was numb for a year.
I mean, she must have had enough feeling because she didn't stop the abuse.
Yeah. Well, that's why she got 2 hands.
Right. So now it's time for the sexual assault. Rose, in September of 1972, had their 8-year-old Anne-Marie taken to the cellar at 25 Cromwell Street. She was ordered to undress, with Rose tearing her dress from her body upon seeing Anne-Marie's hesitation. She was then stripped naked, bound to a mattress, and gagged before Fred raped her.
That poor thing.
And Rose was actively encouraging him to rape her. She told Anne-Marie, "Everybody does it to every girl. It's a father's job. Don't worry and don't say anything to anybody." Making it clear that the abuse would continue. They both threatened the child with severe beatings if they ever received word that she had told anybody about the abuse.
And I don't want to excuse her because there is no excuse for doing that to your own child.
No.
But with her being a child herself that was abused by her father, like she has trauma.
She thinks it's okay, honestly. She probably thinks it's okay.
She should, well, she knows it's not okay because she's threatening not to tell.
Yeah.
So she knows it's wrong. But I wish people would have gotten more help back then. You know, such trauma that they just let go unresolved. And it just perpetuates generation after generation then.
Occasionally, Rose would abuse Anne-Marie by herself and later took extreme gratification in degrading her with the act, such as binding her to various items of furniture before encouraging Fred to rape her or forcing her to perform household chores while wearing sexual devices and a miniskirt. They forced Anne-Marie into prostitution at the age of 13, telling the clients that she was 16. Rose, bless her soul, was always present because
Mother of the year.
she had to take care of her daughter. And she was always present in the room and had to make sure that Anne-Marie hadn't told them her real age. On an occasion, when Anne-Marie was 13 or 14, Rose took her to a local pub, insisting she drink several glasses of barley wine. Several hours later, Fred arrived at the pub to get Anne-Marie and Rose. When they left the premises, and Anne-Marie was buckled into her father's van and beaten by Rose, who asked her, "Do you think you could be my friend?" before they sexually abused her. Like, why play games? You could just fucking abuse her at home. Why you gotta embarrass her too?
Because they enjoy it. That's part of it. Belittling.
Mm-hmm. Carolyn Owens, in October of 1972, is who they hired, who was 17 years old, to be their children's nanny. They picked her up one night on a country road. She was hitchhiking after visiting her boyfriend. They learned that Owens disliked her stepfather and was looking for a job. Fred and Rose offered the part-time position as a nanny to the 3 children at the time. They promised her that she would be driven home each Tuesday. Several days later, Owens moved into the 25 Cromwell Street flat and shared a room with Anne-Marie. Owens said Anne-Marie was very withdrawn. Rose was engaged in prostitution at the time, told Owens that she worked as a masseuse, and the younger woman inquired about the steady stream of men visiting her. Owens then became a recipient of the West's over-sexual advances, and she announced how she was going to leave and go back home. Knowing her habits of hitchhiking along the A4 between Cinderford and Tewkesbury, they formulated a plan to abduct her for the shared gratification. Fred admitted that the specific intent of his abduction was the rape and likely murder of Owens, but the initial incentive was determined whether his wife would be willing to at least assist him in the abduction. And on December 6, 1972, they lured Owens into their vehicle with an apology of their actions and offered her a ride home. She believed the West had been sincere in their apologies and obliged. Rose sat in the back seat with her and explained that she wanted to a girls' chat as Fred drove. The next morning, having noted Owen screaming when one of his children knocked on the door of the room in which she was restrained, Fred threatened that he and his wife would keep her locked in the cellar and allow his black friends to abuse her, and that when they had finished, they would bury her body beneath the paving stones of Gloucester. Fred killed hundreds. This is another thing. They were only accused of killing 10, not accused. What do you call it? When they are indicted, found guilty, whatever, of 10. But this said
Charged
with 10. But it says Fred killed hundreds of young girls and that Owens had been brought to the house for Rose's pleasure, and then asked Owens whether she would consider returning to the work as their nanny. So seeing her escape, Owens agreed and vacuumed the house to indicate her belief and becoming an extended part of the family. Later that day, she escaped from a laundrette, which I'm assuming is like a laundromat or something. And when Rose had entered, she was gone. She returned home. When her mother asked her about her injuries, she broke down and told her mother everything. Her mom reported it immediately to the police, and they were charged with assault, indecent assault, actual bodily harm, and rape. They were tried at the Gloucester Magistrates Court on January 12, 1973. But by this day, Owens decided she could not face the ordeal of giving the testimony. So all the charges were dropped, and the Wests agreed to plead guilty to the reduction charge of indecent assault and causing actual bodily harm. They were fined £50, which is equivalent to £619 in 2024. The couple were allowed to walk free. When Owens heard this, she attempted suicide, which I get you don't want to testify, and I get that it's a very scary thing. However, they got to walk free because you didn't, and then they are going to hurt more people. Like, they're evil people. Just testify. Put them in jail.
And until we're in that situation, I think it'd be hard to
comment on that.
Yeah.
Fred and Rose were arrested on August 6, 1992, and Fred was accused of raping his 13-year-old daughter 3 times. Rose was because of child cruelty. The daughter refused to testify in court, so on June 7, 1983, the case was dismissed. However, all 5 of the children were taken into custody to go into foster homes.
Good.
And because of that, it had shown interest in the disappearance of Heather, who nobody saw since 1987, so they started an investigation. The police found remains and signs of torture at the Cromwell Street house, so Rose and Fred were arrested in February of 94. Rose denied murdering any victims and insisted that her husband did it and did it alone.
What a piece of shit. Like, you even killed his stepdaughter. You killed your own daughter. And now you're just going to let him take the fall for
all of it. She also said she tried to stop one of the sexual assaults that her husband was doing. She played stupid about what her husband was doing, but the evidence stacked against the couple were good enough to prosecute for 10 murders, and those bodies were found at the Cromwell Street house along with Charmaine. Fred was also charged with 2 other murders that he did before he met Rose. When he was arrested in 1994, he confided to Janet Leach and said that Rose murdered Shirley Robinson and assisted him with dismembering her body, along with personally removing the fetus from Shirley's womb. They found Heather under the patio at the Cromwell Street house, who was murdered in 1987. In June, the rumor is that Heather started to tell her friends about the abuse. Barry, her younger brother, would later describe watching, and he was 7 at the time. His mother kicked Heather repeatedly in the head until she wasn't moving. They told neighbors and friends that she left home to work at Devonshire Holiday Village, and even once they made a fake phone call, supposedly from Heather, to her siblings, so that way they wouldn't think that she had disappeared. Fred would often taunt his children when they misbehaved, saying jokingly, "If you don't behave, you'll end up under the patio like Heather."
What kind of sick fuck would make a joke about that?
Right. Especially when nobody knows where Heather is, and she's supposedly...
And it's not really a joke.
It's true.
At all.
Right.
Because she really was there.
And he very well may have put them there if they misbehaved. Heather was the last murder that they have been known to commit while on remand at HM Prison, Birmingham. Fred killed himself by hanging on January 1st of 1995. Good. At the pretrial in February of 95, Rose pleaded not guilty for the 10 murders. Charmaine was added to the original 9 after Fred's suicide. Also, 2 counts of rape and indecent assault of young girls having been dropped with a view for later resubmission. Though there was circumstantial evidence that Rose's willingness to subject the young girls to sadistic physical and sexual abuse, her trial began on October 3rd, 1995 at Winchester Crown Court with Mr. Justice Mantell and a jury. On an early decision by the judge was to admit a testimony related to the sexual assault of 3 women by Fred and Rose. They accepted the prosecution's argument and said that they established a pattern of behavior repeated in the murders. For the prosecution and its opening statement, Brian Levison said that the Wests were sadistic, sex-obsessed murderers, turning the bodies discovered... Hold on. Brian Levinson, said that the Wests were sadistic, sexual obsessed murderers. The bodies discovered at Cromwell Street House in Midland Road were, what he quoted, more terrible than words can express. The victim's last moments on earth or as objects of the sexual depravity of this woman and her husband. He also pointed out that Fred had been incarcerated when Charmaine was killed.
Yeah, so it had to have been.
It had to be her.
Her.
Yeah. It was also said that they learned from their mistake in allowing Caroline Owens to live and said that the gag on the victim, Charisse Siegenthaler, was a feminine touch. A scarf tied in a bow, so some of the prosecution's witnesses included the Crown, Wall Street lodgers, victims' relatives, Rose's mother, Daisy, and sister Glynis, and surviving victims, including Anne Marie West, Catherine Holliday, which was a former lover of Fred and Rose, Catherine Owens, and a mystery woman who had been sexually assaulted at age 14 by Fred and Rose in 1977. They described Rose as the more aggressive perpetrator of the two, and neighbors described Charmaine's disappearance in 1971 while Fred was in prison. So again, more people saying he was in prison when this happened. And Rose's casual indifference to her disappearance, Rose's counsel, Dick Ferguson, tried to discredit the prosecution's witness after having financially exploited their connection to the case. Motivated by grudges, Owens did admit to receiving £20,000 for her story, described her extreme survivor's guilt. I only want to get justice for the girls who didn't make it. I feel like it was my fault.
But, that's a shame, too, because she was only 17 at the time, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to ask a teenager to do. I feel for her.
Yeah. The defense testimony, Dick Ferguson, said that Fred, before meeting Rose, had committed at least one murder similar to those that they had committed together, and that the prosecution case was largely circumstantial. He also said that Rose was unaware of Fred's sadism and urged the jury not to be prejudiced of her promiscuity and domineering manner. Rose testified even though her counsel told her not to, and she did it anyway. She sometimes showed remorse and tearful, sometimes upbeat and humorous. She cried while describing herself as a victim of child abuse who naively married a violent and domineering man, but then joked about issues as her always being pregnant, and then laughed by describing the victim's grandfather glasses. She also claims she never had met 6 of the victims buried at the Cromwell Street house and recall very little memory on the assault of Owens. She was shown photographs of the victims buried in the cellar and victims Allison Chambers and asked whether she recognized any of their faces. Rose turned bright red and repeatedly stuttered as she replied, "No, sir." When she was questioned about the Cromwell Street house and her life there, she claimed that she and Fred lived separate lives, which was inconsistent with the earlier testimony of the witnesses that had visited the lodge. When they asked about the relationship with her oldest child, she admitted her relations with Heather were strained before claiming to the court her daughter was a lesbian who had physically and psychologically abused her siblings. But even though she had these allegations against her daughter, she said that she loved her daughter and held no knowledge of her murder. When she was questioned further, it was contradictory explanations that she and Fred had given to Heather's disappearance. She claimed these discrepancies had stemmed from telephone conversations she had with Heather after Heather had moved out.
Lying sack of shit.
The defense called some women to testify that Fred had assaulted or attacked them by himself between 1966 and 1975. There were 7 women that recognized him through photographs and appeared when he appeared in the media in 1994. The testimonies were to show that Fred was capable of abducting, assaulting, and attempting to check women without Rose, which the prosecution did not dispute. The last witness was Fred's appointed appropriate adult. That's who that is. Janet Leach is his appointed appropriate adult, which is like a caseworker, social worker type person, or a lawyer. Janet Leach. She was called to testify on November 7th and rebutted to the tape recordings of Fred's confession, which were played for the courts on November 3rd. He has stressed that Rose known nothing at all about the murders. Leach had testified Fred had gradually begun to view her as a confidant and confided in her in the evening prior to February 25th. That he and Rose had formed a pact where he would take full responsibility for all the murders, which he described many of them as being some of Rose's mistakes. He then said that Rose did murder Charmaine while he had been incarcerated and also murdered Robinson. He also said that Rose participated in the mutilation and dismemberment of Robinson, having personally removed the child from her womb after her death. As for the other 8 remaining murders, which Rose was charged, Leach testified that Fred had confided that she had played a major part in these murders. When Leach was cross-examined, she conceded to Ferguson she had earlier lied on her own about having sold her story to the national newspaper for £100,000. She was adamant to the sincerity of her testimony. She collapsed at the trial, and it was adjourned for 6 days.
Now, is she not held under the same, like, client confidentiality clause? Like,
if she's a lawyer, doesn't she have to... I don't know.
If she's his, she has to keep it confidential.
Yeah, I guess not. Because she said everything.
So she must not have been anything legally
like
lawyer to him.
Yeah. So 6 days later, she returned to finish the cross-examination. And on November 13th, after 7 weeks of evidence, the judge told the jury that the circumstantial evidence can be sufficient to finding guilt, and that there have been 2 people to take part in the murder. The law considers them equally guilty, regardless of which one of them did it. So even though Fred's dead, Rose was still a part of the murder, so she's just as guilty as he is.
Yeah.
November 21st and 22nd of 1995, they returned unanimously guilty verdict for all 10 murders, terming her crimes appalling and depraved. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, saying that she would never be paroled. She would spend at least 25 years in prison, but in July of 1997, Home Secretary Jack Straw subject to Rose a whole life tariff. This was the only second time that has ever happened in the UK in modern times. The first being serial killer Mira Hindley in 1990. She filed for an appeal against the 10 murders, claiming that her husband, who confessed to the police during his questioning, had ended up murdering 30 people. She said that he committed the murders by himself, and saying that she'd also been victimized by Fred and tried to prevent one of the sexual assaults. On March 18, 1996, the court refused her consideration, and in September of 2001, she said that she wasn't going to do any further appeals. So, good, because you're not getting out anyway because you're a murderer. But she still maintained her innocence. She was originally incarcerated at HM Prison, Bronzefield, Middlesex, as a Category A prisoner. She later transferred to HM Prison, Low Newton, in County Durham. And it was reported that in May of 1985, Rose and Moore murdered Mira Hindley, who were both incarcerated at HM Prison, Durham. At the time, Rose was on remand and had formed a friendship with Hindley. Before Hindley died, she denied the claims of Rose, acknowledging that they knew each other from being in the same wing, but denied further speculation. She was having an affair in 2019, and that's why she was transferred to HM Prison Newhall in West Yorkshire, where serial killer Joanna Dennehy had just been transferred to Low Newton and threatened to kill West. And that was the reason for the transfer. But unofficial or official sources stated that the reports were untrue. So it's a good thing she left Low Newton. I mean, not a good thing. Missed opportunity is what it was.
Yeah.
but she could have been murdered by Dennehy, and sadly she wasn't.
And she's still alive today.
She's, what I say, she was 70?
70 or 77 or something like that.
She is 70, and she is incarcerated in HM Prison Newhoff, Flockton, West Yorkshire.
Yeah. And there she'll remain until she dies.
Thank God. He obviously looks way older. She looks like she would be in her 40s or 50s, but she's only like, what, 17 or 18?
Not in that picture.
It was taken in 83. She was born in 50. Oh, okay. So she was 30.
Yeah.
I was thinking that was taken early.
But they were not attractive people for them having threesomes and lovers and clients of the sex work. I'll just put a picture up.
Yeah, because you're not going to be able to see it. But yeah, they're not very attractive people to be doing what they did. Not saying attractive people doing it is okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yucky people.
Horrible parents.
Horrible parents. And like, they only talked about a few of the kids. Where were the other kids?
Yeah.
So yeah,
probably
that was
laying low and trying to
not
be noticed.
Mm-hmm. Sliding under the radar.
Yeah. That's so sad.
That was Rosemary, not Rosemary, Rosemary West.
Which I do like the name Rosemary.
Yeah.
Have you seen Rosemary's Baby?
Mm-hmm.
The old one or the new one?
Oh, the old one. I didn't know there was a new one.
Yeah, there's a newer one. I mean, it's probably several years old now, but yeah, who was it? Is it Mia?
Mia Farrow?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think that was.
Yeah. So yeah, that was them. Sadistic assholes who deserve to die. And I don't say that about a lot of people, but they did, because they were children.
We say it increasingly so
more and more
on this show.
Yeah.
I just always see are horrible people.
Yeah.
So on that note, if you have any horrible people that you know that's committed murder, send us an email and let us know about it. We might look into it.
Or any stories that you want to tell us, anybody that's fucking fairies,
alien abductions,
paranormal, just anything. Send it to
spinechillingchatspodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can go to our website and buy our merchandise and also submit a story there at
www.spine-chillingchatspodcast.com.
Yes. Find us on Instagram,
Facebook,
TikTok,
YouTube,
and I believe that's it for now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like us,
subscribe,
share with everyone.
Tell your friends, tell your moms, let them know it's R-rated.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't tell your
don't tell your grandparents. Moms
or your fellow church members.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not the place.
Sometimes moms are cool. So if your mom is cool, your dad is cool, tell them to check us out.
Yeah. But we have fun doing this. We want to continue doing this. So comment, let us know that you're listening. And we hope you had fun.
We did. Well,
as fun as you can.
Yeah.
On the subject matter. But we hope you come back, and we hope you keep it spooky. Bye, guys.
Bye.